Puff additive is a new addition to the FN ink line that makes an ink puff. It elevates the print, making it literally stand off the shirt. Puff can make a print unique, but there are a few tips and tricks you'll need to know to master this process. Puff has tiny bubbles that will expand once they start to hit that 200-degree range. This is what makes the ink puff up and add height to your final print. Puff can literally be added anywhere in a design. You can mix it into your favorite low-cure white and use it as either a full underbase for a multicolor design or as an accent, just like I did here with the owl. When puff is printed direct to fabric, it will expand on the shirt as the ink grabs and adheres to the fabric. This will make the fabric pucker. If we have a white underbase, that effect is greatly diminished. It's the same amount of ink going down, but because that white base is there to be more stable, it's not puckering the fabric as much. One of the key aspects to achieving a good puff print is getting the right mixing ratio. The FN puff additive will need to be mixed into another low cure ink at the right ratio. For best results, add between 10 to 20% of the puff by weight into your low cure ink. For a subtle puff effect, drop the percentage of puff added to around 5 to 10% by weight. Adding more than 20% may result in the ink becoming unstable and a bit flaky. In order to get the amount of loft you want out of a print, you have two levers that you can pull. The first one is how thick your ink deposit is. The second one is your percentage of puff. If you have a thick deposit of ink, but a little bit of puff additive, then you just get a smaller loft. If you go with a thin deposit of ink, but a lot of puff, your ink's only gonna puff so much because that percentage, that ratio, is not gonna make that thin deposit of ink puff up as much as a thicker deposit of ink. So a thicker deposit of ink with a lot of puff in it, that max of 20% that we recommend, is gonna give you a fantastic amount of puff. For this print here, I did a single flood and a single print. And we have a nice little bit of loft here. Here it is with a flood print. We can clearly see that we've got a lot more puff going on. This one was a two-stroke, flashed it, and then another two-stroke. I wanted to see just how much puff I could get on this and how crazy the inside of the shirt was gonna look. Let's get the press set up. We recommend using lower mesh counts, like 86 to 110 standard mesh. Also, applying a thicker coat of emulsion to your screen will help to achieve that loftier print. If possible, please use higher tension screens. If you happen to have thin thread mesh, using anything between a 110 and a 157 mesh will work great. Since puff requires a thicker ink deposit, you want to increase your off contact a little bit more than normal. We want to choose either a 60 or a 70 durometer squeegee blade. That softer squeegee equals a thicker ink deposit and a larger puff as a result. Lastly, warm up your platens. Turn that flash on early and let your platens sit underneath it, rotating them for a few minutes to get them up to what we call production temperature. Not only will warm platens make your inks print easier, it's also going to allow your puff to flash more evenly across the entirety of your design. We don't want it to puff at all. We want it dry to the touch, so we continue on with the rest of our print. First, we want to flood our screen. The reason for the flood stroke is that we are pre-filling this thicker stencil, thereby making it easier to fully clear the ink from the screen, producing a smoother and thicker ink deposit. Flashing the underbase, including underbases with puff added to them, is very important. The biggest factor to consider while flashing puff is keeping the heat low and even throughout the design. Too much heat will cause that ink to puff prematurely. If the puff activates too early, it can then lead to over-curing in the dryer and the puff will end up collapsing. This situation is especially true when puff is mixed in multiple colors. To avoid overheating the puff, raise your flash a little higher or flash off and on to avoid activating that puff deposit too early. Every flash unit has a sweet spot and it doesn't cover the entire surface of the platen. Make sure the shirt is under the sweet spot to accurately gauge how long a print will take to gel during flashing. All right, we've got our design printed. Let's head to the dryer and watch the magic happen. Know that the puffing will begin to activate at around 200 degrees, and it will fully activate and fully cure when the ink reaches 260. This puff layer will be temperature stable until it reaches the 280 to 290 degree range. If the ink ends up getting hotter than that, the little bubbles inside are going to pop, and as a result, the ink will start to collapse. If puff is printed on top of your base white, recognize that your puff ink will activate and begin to puff before the ink underneath it can reach full cure. This is especially evident if you are running your dryer hot and fast. I recommend running your conveyor dryer slower and at a lower temp. Think of it like good barbecue. Low and slow always produces a superior product. When properly cured, the ink layer will be wash stable. Wash testing is the best way to know if your print is completely cured and will hold up over time. So we've all seen puff used in many different ways, most of them to create a very loud visual pop. How you don't see it used is in the more subtle ways. Here in the body of the bird, I did a simple fade going from 100% solid to a 20% fill here on the outside. We can see a small amount of loft and the texture that comes with it. All my puff effects could either be done printing it direct to shirt with the white base over it, or with the white base printed first and the puff printed on top. Both ways will give me about the same amount of puff, but will give me a slightly different visual. We can see that we get a little bit more texture with the puff coming right off of the fabric. In this one, I reversed it. I did the white base first and then the puff print on top of that. First thing you'll notice is that the puff response is a lot smoother. That's because the white base is flat and smooth, allowing the puff to loft without any of the texture interference of the fabric. Personally, I prefer this look if I'm dealing with puff compared to printing direct to fabric. It gives a much smoother, eye-pleasing appearance. One of the main questions people have when printing puff is how much detail can I print? This one is only 10% puff. We can see that we're still keeping very fine detail, but there is a maximum that you can get to. Is this a low percentage of puff and a high ink deposit, or is this a high ink deposit and a lot of puff? What looks best on the shirt for you and your design? FN Ink Puff is a great additive to bring dimensionality to your prints. Make sure to keep track of your processes. Test your processes frequently and develop a system so that everything can be repeated. Comment with any questions you have about this new puff additive. I've personally spent a long time testing this ink, so I will do my best to answer every single one of them. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and we will see you next time.